You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. It's your host, Brian Fullerton, here hanging with you guys today. A little solo episode coming in hot. I'm coming in hot. I feel like this is an Instagram reel over here. But no, one thing I wanted to talk about, just short and sweet, honest to God, this will probably be a little 15-minute podcast here. Wanted to just give some encouraging words about numbers and the financials of your business, and maybe just bring some things to the forefront of your mind with hoping to run a more profitable business. And that's actually stems from a coaching call that I did just about maybe a week or two ago. And I didn't want to let this thought die on the vine. I wanted to just kind of capture this really quick and maybe just share some ideas that I did this analogy. I thought it was a little helpful analogy. And, you know, we do a coaching call probably about 3 or 4 times a week with, various folks that call in or listen in. And, you know, sometimes one person buys 1 hour coaching call and we just catch up and we help them, navigate something in their business, right? Or they have a couple questions, and sometimes they're pressing questions, sometimes they're embarrassing questions, or sometimes they're just questions they don't know the answers to and they just want perspective, right? Or sometimes it's a sounding board thing, right? And so I love doing 1 hour coaching calls. You can purchase them at launchpreneuracademy.com. They're less than $200 for an hour. I always make sure that I add value to whoever calls in. I'm like, hey, did you feel like this call was worth it? They go, yeah. I go, cool. I don't hang up until you feel like you've got, your money's worth. Amen. And so this call that came in, we were talking about knowing your numbers, a younger guy. And so basically, long story short, we talked about how knowing your numbers can help you navigate the growth of your business, the day-to-day function of your business, and help you to where you don't just feel like you're making money, you're actually making money. And that was actually what the gentleman had called in about. He said, I feel like I'm working a lot. I feel like I'm making money, but I don't know if I'm actually making money. How do I know? And I said, that is a really, really good question. That's a really good topic. And we actually talked for, about 35 minutes on it. I'm going to try to do this in about 5 or 10 minutes or less with a fun little analogy, and then we'll just button up really quick. Is that fair enough? So let's do this really quick. Let's hear from today's show sponsors. We always appreciate them supporting the show. By the way, if you guys ever want to hear or see the full list of our sponsors, you can always go to our YouTube channel. And in the YouTube channel description, you can always see the full list of our sponsors. Now, of course, different folks sponsor the podcast, but there's also all of our different affiliates and companies that we get to work with doing all of our social media. For example, quick rundown here: Equipment Defender, Cujo Yardware, ISO Tunes, Proven Locks, Darwin's Grip, Camera Source for rear backup cams, the Plowright Snow Stakes, Ballard Inc., Route 1, Earthway, Rhino Hitch, right? All these different companies, including the X Marks, the Red Max, the Echoes. Those guys we don't really have a Brian's 10 for. I wish. It would be nice to have a Brian's 10 for some X Mark mowers, amen? But for the affiliates and a lot of the ads that play on the podcast, that's what keeps the lights on around here. I mean, in all honesty, it takes a couple $100 to produce shows, couple hours, and if you turn those hours into editing time on YouTube, it's a couple, it's $50 to $100 to edit a YouTube video, if you will. Now, I do my own editing, if you will, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time. We run it as a business because I'm not or a nonprofit yet. One day my goal in life is to give away 90% of my income, like J.C. Penney and all these other guys, and whoever started the Woolworths, stores or whatever it was. Right now, I'm not there yet. Right now, I'm living on 40% of my income, and the other 60% we're banking. So one day I'll be able to be a philanthropist. But in the meantime, we're a for-profit company and a for-profit period of our life because we're still on the come up. We still need to make money just like all of you guys. And so to make content, it costs money, and we want to make sure that we're reciprocating with the sponsors, with you guys. And so we also appreciate you guys reciprocating by supporting the show sponsors. So a little plug there. If you guys ever need any of those products, the Brian's 10 coupon code usually saves $10 or 10% or gets you free shipping. So make sure you guys check there before you just hit checkout. And by the way, little pro tip, little quick hint. If you happen to check out and you forget to apply the code, DM or email those folks. Usually they'll retroactive give you that 10% discount, which saves you guys again, 10%, but then they also throw that little kickback back to us even after you've hit checkout. So we really appreciate that extra little effort. Sometimes you guys DM me or, email me and say, hey, what's your Amazon link again? I got to go buy some, some lawnmower blades online. I want to use your code. Make sure you get that 50 cents through Amazon. And as funny as that is, we do appreciate it. It all sort of some way all adds up into, allowing us to bring this content to you guys Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the podcast, and usually Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday on YouTube. So, all right, let's do this really quick. Let's hear from today's show sponsor. Speaking of which, down from the ATL, we've got Marty, Mr. Producer, who brings you guys the show. And also, a little plug for Marty. He doesn't always get to do this for himself, but if you guys need voiceover work or you guys need help with your content, check him out. He offers voiceover work at a pretty fair rate. So if you guys are trying to put together any Facebook ads or commercials or anything like that for your business, or maybe a radio spot or a TV, commercial, he can do all that stuff. He's done it for so many different podcasts, so many other lawn care business owners, and he's one of the best in the biz, as our friend Paul with the Green Industry Podcast has. So let's kick it over to him really quick, and then we're going to come right on back.
I bet you say that to all the girls. Hey, it's Marty, and I do tell the guys who say nice things about me on their shows all the time, I'll never have to pay for advertising. Appreciate it, my friends. On Monday's podcast, Brian mentioned a big go-kart rally, party, blowout the night before Launchpreneur Academy Live 21. Maybe we could work a deal for me to be the track announcer so I could make fun of your driving. Go ahead and lock in that second weekend in November to join us in Novi, Michigan. And of course, keep listening to Fullerton Unfiltered, checking the LaunchpreneurAcademy.com website for all the specifics coming here shortly. We would like to welcome back to the show as a valued sponsor, Echo, and encourage you to listen to this.
Yeah, this is just a job. Kind of like this is just a blower, and you're just some friends taking in the fall colors. The Echo PB 9010, 220 mile per hour wind speeds, 1,100 cubic feet per minute of bye-bye. It's just the most powerful backpack blower in the world. So maybe that was just a job after all. Echo, power on and on.
Lawns, lessons, and live. This is the Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast. Now, your host, Brian Fullerton.
All right, guys, so let's jump right back into the topic about knowing your numbers, knowing your worth, and how to actually have a profitable business and not just feel like you have a profitable business. Although, I'm going to play devil's advocate on that thought too, because sometimes you think you're making money in your business, but you don't feel like you're making money in business. And, there's other times where I do navigate kind of fly by wire here. And I'm like, you know what? That was a pretty profitable job. I know we made money on that. I don't have to check my notes. But here's what I will say. Let's go back to the question that the young man proposed on the coaching call that we did. He said, hey, what does knowing your numbers actually mean? And I thought it was a really, really good question, because we did a podcast with Mike Bedell and John Pajak about a year ago. You've heard all last year, 2019, 2020, the topic was know your worth, know your numbers, like understand you run a business, right? And a lot of us are just go, right? We want to do the work. We want to focus on the work, the how, the what, the who, like what we're doing. We want to take a photo of it when we're done, post it on Facebook, post on Instagram. I get it. Me too. Actually, that was my life story for the first, 10, 12 years in business. I was like doing pretty good work, to be fair. Like we cut lawns, we did some decent landscaping, like when we did do it. And I enjoyed it, but we weren't making any money. Right? And at the end of the day, if you are not making money with your business, you are a nonprofit business. And again, maybe some of you guys are out there in that, philanthropy stage of your life. For me, I'm not there yet. So we need to make money. Okay. So the young man said, what does knowing your numbers really mean? And I kind of thought about it two different ways. And for me, it was, number one, let's make sure. Now, he did a lot more landscaping. Now, he did some maintenance, but most of his work was landscaping. And I said, well, something that I've learned, observed, and seen, and maybe this can help you guys out, is looking at the profitability of that individual job. But then if we go on to Google Earth, we pinch out, use the pinch out tool, and right, we zoom out, and then you go from the state to the country to the continent to the globe. Right? We're just pinching out. I said, two things you got to make sure you're doing in tandem. One is making sure you have profitable jobs, but number two, making sure you have a profitable company. Now, he was actually not using a CRM just yet. It was like his first or second, maybe third year in business. a lot of legal pads, yellow papers, sticky notes, writing down jobs, submitting estimates. He actually used our commercial our commercial lawn care contract for a couple of his jobs, but for landscaping, he was just using some yellow sheets, and I think he had some of his own contracts made up of some capacity. So the simple thing I told him, number one, you have to know what you're making on those individual landscape jobs, right? I said, and he wasn't using QuickBooks. He wasn't using a CRM, right? A CRM is like Yardbook and Element and Jobber. They're all great. Like, just use one, right? Now, I use Yardbooks. It's extremely simple. It helps us manage our business, manage our customers. We have all their client info in there. How many yards of mulch is for their landscaping beds? Any special notes? Their email info, their credit cards are on file, their square footage of their lawn, their weekly price, right? All that data is what's in our CRM. Well, we also use in tandem QuickBooks, right? We use QuickBooks for our financials, for our taxes, for our profitability, the reporting, everything that we get, all of our numbers are in QuickBooks, right? Now, I will say this, like, I'm definitely more like a 70-30 split, front of the house, back of the house. Front of the house, you're in sales, you're building the company, you're growing the company, you're marketing. That's the stuff that I really enjoy doing. Now, I will say probably about 3-4 years ago, I was 80-20, 90-10, right? I didn't care about the financials, the numbers. We were making enough money to be profitable, and I wasn't, what would I say? I wasn't paycheck to paycheck. We weren't destitute, but I also just wasn't dialing it in. I didn't know what we made off a landscape job, off a mulch install, right? I was profitable, but I didn't know how profitable. I didn't know what percentage profitable. I didn't have actually QuickBooks 4 years ago, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know how we got this far, sort of, and still stayed in business, right? I think if we didn't have the hyper route density that we did, we probably would have been a statistic after 10, 11 years in business, and I probably would have gave up. Thank God I found this whole community of folks, and so don't let my 10 years of mistakes be your 10 years of mistakes. If you're like our friend that had the coaching call, he's like, I'm making a commitment to get a CRM. I'm getting a bookkeeper. I'm getting QuickBooks. I'm going to figure this all out in the next 60 to 90 days. And he's going to start learning his numbers. So let's go back to the conversation. Number one, you got to know what you're making on these individual landscape jobs, right? And there's a bunch of numbers and formulas, and you kind of have to figure out what works for you. But let's take a 50% gross profit margin, right? A lot of people tout that. So if you're doing a $3,000 landscape job, you have $1,500 into it, and you're grossing $1,500 off that job. Now, net profit is not the same thing as your gross profit, okay? Gross profit is after the expenses of the job. Net profit is after the expenses of the whole business. And as my friend Caleb Allman says, including owners' salaries. Now, for example, if you did $100,000 last year and you had $50,000, in expenses, you had $50,000 left over, your company did not necessarily make $50,000. That's what a lot of people say they made as profit. However, if you're an owner of that company and you paid yourself a $40,000 salary, the true net profit of your company, for example, is $10,000, right? So don't get that confused. You have to put in your owner's salaries, because you have to, same thing with like the labor of a job. You have to factor in your labor hours in mowing, in a landscaping job, because what if you pull yourself out of that job and you didn't account for your hours, but you had to pay somebody $15, $18, $20, $25 an hour to take care of the labor, right, that you had on that job, right? So we always want to make sure that we're factoring ourselves into the cost of our work. Just because you eat the cost on the labor doesn't mean you don't have to pay the cost on the labor, right? That was one of the biggest life lessons I had learned these last 4 years. I learned a lot of this from Bedell and the almonds and all this other stuff, right? So number one, we want to make sure that that job is profitable, and whatever percentage that you want to stick to, that's how you can know where those rates and those prices are supposed to come into play. For example, if you did a job and you noticed that your gross profit margin was 30%, but you needed to have a 50% gross profit margin, what can you do? Well, you can raise the price on that landscaping job to make more money, to hit that target percentage profit, okay? Now, same thing with let's zoom out. That's the individual thing. Now you can price that per landscape job, per lawn, get a stopwatch. I'm telling you, the best tool in my entire business and career was a stopwatch, right? Because I timed all of our lawns about 4 years ago, and whether we were running $2 a minute, we were a penny a square foot, $40 base, $50 to $5 for half to 3/4 acre, $60 to $85 for an acre, whatever, right? We had to start figuring out what numbers work best for us based on our overhead and our labor rate, right? That's what we had to figure out. Like, I'm learning this stuff too, and this has helped us become exceedingly more profitable, to the point where we were making true net profit, probably 10, 20, 30 grand, right? After a decade in business, to 6 figures total net profit. Well, I'd say 60 to 80, but let's just round up because it just sounds better, right? Just having fun. But that's what we had to do. We had to really start dialing in our numbers, because I was like, yeah, dude, I'm making 50,000. I'm making 100,000. No, I wasn't. Like, true profit, true profit, right? So that's the kind of stuff that between our salaries and our true net profit, we're at that 100 part right now. And that's, to me, like, very, very successful. So I'm very, very happy with how we run our company. But let's pinch out. That's the next part I want to talk about with this gentleman, was let's pinch out. Let's talk about the macro of your company. Same thing, same formulas, right? Let's start figuring out all of our overhead, all of our costs, our salaries, and then the percentage profit we want to make with the company, right? And that's where QuickBooks is going to come into play, or whatever other tool you guys use. I'm sure there's other ones out there. We don't reinvent the wheel, okay? We're just using QuickBooks and Yardbook, and we have a bookkeeper that helps us out with QuickBooks to help us manage all these numbers. And something that, just talking out loud, just talking frank, that I've been able to do this last 18 to 24 months is every month we get those monthly P&L reports, our balance sheet, our income statements, whatever you guys call these different reports. And I look at them. I look at them for 10, 15, 20 minutes. I look at the costs. I look at the percentages. Where are we at? What do we do? But then something also, like I said, to go full circle, that I've been doing now is looking at the individual cost and profits of each job that we're doing. And I learned that a lot from the Almonds this last spring. They do overhead cost recovery, and they do a P&L per job. It never dawned on me to do that with my mulch jobs. I'm like, yeah, we do 33 yards. It's $31.95, and we make, I don't know, whatever, $1,800 off it, or whatever, right? Well, what percentage is that? Well, now we have all of my receipts. We have all the numbers, the time, the labor. I'm recording all this stuff. Now in the off season, I can go back and do an individual job cost. What did we actually charge for this? What did we actually have in cost? What did we actually make in profit? Right? That's the type of stuff that I'm excited about breaking down in our spare time and in the off season. And before, we never did that. Like I was telling our friends, sometimes you feel like you're working and you think you were profitable, or you feel like you were profitable, but you don't really know if you were profitable. Well, don't run your business for a decade with that philosophy, okay? Let's actually break it down. And I'm just being candid here. Like, can we just be real? Like, I don't have it all figured out. I'm always learning, right? Now, we learn, we adjust. That's something that I am really good at, is we figure out what we're doing wrong, we fix it, and we move on. Because like a lot of you guys, I have that fix-it mentality. I just want to fix it, move on. I don't want problems to be problems longer than they have to be, because it causes pain. Nobody likes pain or uncomfortability. I can't say that word. I don't like to be uncomfortable. So I want to fix that problem. So let's go to the macro of our business. That was the same thing. I was like, well, I thought we, did 20,000, and whether we made 10 grand profit or 14 grand profit or 6 grand profit, like I didn't know. And not only did I not know what we were doing then, I didn't know how it compared to the year before, the last 2 years, the three last years in a row. What's our average, right? I didn't know what our fuel was. I didn't know what our labor was. I all these different line items, right, on our expense report. These are some of those nuances I learned from Bedell. And I've said this before, it wasn't any one thing that I learned from Bedell. It was just these conversations that he would say, how he would talk. And it just made me realize I'm not talking like him or thinking like him. And I want to emulate people who are, in my opinion, successful. So it really got me thinking when I was like, yeah, we use this much more fuel or this much more labor or this much more whatever, but our prices didn't go up. And Bedell's like, well, that's really interesting. Well, why would that not increase? And I'm like, that's a good question. So it really made me go to my reports and actually look at these things. So when I have a bookkeeper, it's not like, hey, I got a bookkeeper. and I got a P&L. It's, did you actually look at the P&L? Did you actually look at your numbers? And that's the problem. I think that, I'll just talk frank for me. I don't think I spend enough time going back into my books to see what we actually are doing or actually are making sometimes. Because when you're broke, you're broke, right? You don't have enough money. When you start making a little bit of money and you can not shop off the dollar menu, or there's always enough money for mulch, right? You don't have to put $1,000, $2,000 of landscape materials on the credit card, front it for 30 days, pray the customer pays you, and then pay that off. You get comfortable. You start getting comfortable that you have some cash. You have some cash flowing in. And I don't want to say like I got lazy or we get lazy as business owners. My warning here is don't get lazy. Don't get comfortable, right? Don't be assuming, right? We want to check our work and it's just a few minutes. It's a few minutes to look at your QuickBooks. You can open it up in real time. That's why we encourage you to get a bookkeeper so you can look at this stuff real time. How are you doing this week, this month, this quarter, this 6 months, right? We're into the first, second week of July here at the time of this recording. And how did you do the first 6 months of the year? Are you up compared to the same 6 months last year? Are you down? Did you have a good month or bad month? Did you have unexpected expenses or unexpected growth of revenue or income or profit? Like where are you at? And again, I'm not going to get lost in the weeds with where you should be or like what percentages of profit to aim for, because everybody's different. But the point is, I just want you to have a better bearing on where you're at. And, we could do analogies all day long about if you're on the airplane and you got the GPS going from LA to New York and you set the GPS in there once, but you never reference the GPS and you start flying east, right? And then you get over Las Vegas, Nevada, and then you're over in Kansas, and then somehow you're over in, Alabama. And the next thing you know, you wind up in Orlando, Florida. Well, did you look at your GPS this whole time? No, you started the route to go into New York, but somehow along the way you got, sidetracked and you wind up in Orlando, Florida. That's how so many people, myself, by the way, for a decade ran my business, and it's how so many people today run their business as well. So here's my big macro. And this was a 35, 40-minute conversation, and we got really, really into it about numbers. Is once you know your individual jobs, your individual mowing, right? Then you can zoom out and you can start running your whole company, right? With those P&Ls and those profit and loss statements to see what the company is doing. Then you even zoom out even more. And what is a business, right? We talk about this sometimes on the podcast. A business is a tool to provide a certain amount of income, to provide a lifestyle, right? That's it. I mean, like, I'm not my business. My business isn't me. Like, for a decade, I was the business. I am the business. And my self-image was so wrapped up in this thing. I had to like kind of step out of it and say, well, this is a thing I own. It's a tool. And this tool used right gets me what I want. Well, let's say I need a certain amount of income that provides a certain amount of lifestyle, right? We always talk about begin with the end in mind. So let's say I need to have a certain lifestyle. And that lifestyle, your house, your mortgage, your car payments, your Visa bill, your electricity, your $5,000 a year vacation, budget, your, $2,000 jewelry or watch budget or whatever, whatever, that lifestyle, $70,000 a year. Well, where are you pulling that 70,000? What tools are providing that 70,000? Is it rental income? Is it a lawn and landscape company? Is it, I don't know, your $100,000 investment into Fundrise? I don't know, right? But your business could be all of it. Your business could be 10% of it. Your business could be 100% of that financial pie that gives you that income that pays for the lifestyle, right? So I said, knowing your numbers comes all the way from that first mow, that little mow job for $40 or $50, and you made $18 net profit, true profit, to that landscape job you did for $5,000. You made $2,500 gross profit and, $1,300 net profit, right? Like, figure out the little things, figure out the bigger things. Then you figure out the month, you figure out the company. And then let's say your landscaping company is 70% of your income on the pie chart. And that pie chart, that total income needs to be $70,000 a year. Well, your landscape company nets you 50. Where's the other 20,000 coming from? Oh, it's my 2 rental properties that I, net $500 on rent per month times 2. $1,000 a month. That's 12 grand a year. That's that 60, 70 grand a year I need to afford my lifestyle. So, like for example, Josh Latimer said, there's people out there that are dumber than you that already have what you want. And so there's so many people out there that just, when you're learning math in school and the quadratic formula and cosine tangent and all these other, in my opinion, stupid things and topics that I'm grateful to learn, but completely didn't matter in life. It was irrelevant math. I'm learning stuff I don't need to know. It's completely a waste of my time. However, if I wanted a $70,000 a year lifestyle and I had to figure out the math backwards, well, now that's fun, right? I need this thing to do this much money. I need this to provide this much income. I need to do this much work and this much labor hours and this much. I need to work 1,680 hours this year. I got 180 working days or 210 working days. I need to make this much per hour, right? This is actually one of the things that we talked about on this coaching call with this young man. I said, let's say you want to make $250,000 a year. And let's not get into like gross and net, but let's just say like you want to make 250 grand a year and you're trading 2,000 hours per year. And that means per hour, you need to make $125 per hour. Well, let's say that a customer comes up to you and you're doing something, you're bidding something, whatever that job is, whatever industry that is. And somebody comes up to you and says, I'll pay you $80 an hour. Well, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know yourself, and you don't know what you're trying to do, you could say yes, $80 an hour for whatever thing. You're a painter, a landscaper, you're crafting pianos. I don't know, but you think $80 an hour is pretty good. The reality is to hit that income goal, that lifestyle goal, the income goal for your lifestyle, you need to make $125, or that $250,000 a year on 2,000 hours a year. You need to make $125 an hour. So if you know your numbers and you know what you're trying to do, you can say no to that customer, no to that job, no to that gig, right? Because it's not going to get you the goal of that $125 per hour, for example, that you're trading 2,000 working hours a year to give you that $250,000 year income, right? So trust me, I'm not a very intelligent person. I'm not very highbrow. I am not an intellectual. I listen to Jordan Peterson, my friend Jordan. A little plug there for Caleb Ballman. Caleb's friend Jordan talks all the time. Caleb Ballman with the Kid Contractor podcast. Caleb and Brittany Allman, great people. I listen to a guy like Jordan Peterson. He's so intelligent and intellectual and articulate and a wordsmith, and the analogies are just incredible. But me, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer or the brightest bulb in the hallway. Half the time I don't even get my analogies right? So my point is, I am smart enough to know simple math, right? I was able to take a look at my life the last 4 or 5 years, and this helped me just gain some clarity with what I'm trying to do. And I just realized, whoa, like if I do this, I can get that. If I do this, I can do that. How can I pay for this expensive house? Well, I just need to have these different assets in place. Well, how do I get this car? Well, I just need to make this asset, make this income, right? Like how I want to get this watch. Okay, well, I need to do this landscape, like this much jobs, because each job nets me this much. And I just started breaking things down, right? I need this much assets, whether it's under management or this much invested with this percent return, the rule of 28, 36, the rule of 72, all these different financial things that I had to start learning, right? You got to learn money and learn finances. This is the kind of stuff that really helped me out. And we talk about knowing your worth or knowing your numbers. What it really meant was you had to start spending some time in the business, learning how a business works. At least that was my story. I'm like, dude, I'm mowing grass sun up to sundown. Like I was entitled or I was just supposed to derive this $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 income. Well, no, not necessarily. So I had to go and actually spend time in the office, which a lot of us don't want to do. I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, right? Like a great analogy here is anybody who works out listening to the show, they always say abs are made in the kitchen, right? People go to the gym 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, but if you eat garbage the other 21 hours a day or the other 13 hours that you're awake per day on your 16-hour day, well, it doesn't matter if you were at the gym for 3 hours if you eat like crap the other 16. So abs are made in the kitchen. Another one that I used an analogy with this young man and just made sense to me was I like flying. I want to get into flying. I want to get my private pilot's license. I want to buy a helicopter. I want to buy everything. I want to buy a plane, just like you guys, right? I'm a big dreamer. I'm working hard. I'm working so hard behind the scenes, like every minute of every hour of every day, just like so many of you guys, right? I want the nicer things because I came from broke. I came from zero. I came from nothing. And then when you realize that you can start getting these things if you work hard and you start learning and you start thinking bigger and you start networking, like, dude, like I got a shot. That's my goal. Like I want to make this stuff happen. And I'm honest and I'm real. At least I talk about my dreams. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you think you're going to get a helicopter? I don't know, but I'm either going to do it or die trying. Okay. Like it's better than leaving a negative comment on somebody's DM or Instagram. But a really good analogy, like when you talk about flying or you talk about your helicopter pilot's license, right? I have a friend of mine, he's a pilot and he's also instrument rated. And so when you're flying, right, and you get your first level of your pilot's license, you can take an airplane up, take a little Cessna. You're up in the sky, you're flying at, I don't know, 2,000 feet, 4,000 feet, 5,000 feet. I don't even know. But you're flying line of sight, right? You can only fly in clear days, maybe overcast a little bit, but you can't fly in the storms. You want to avoid storms. You don't know peaks and elevations. You're just like, yo, don't hit anything, right? Don't crash. And if you're a pilot, you're probably, one, going to also appreciate this analogy, and two, think it's a little crude. Forgive me. I'm not a pilot, like I said. But the point is, we're flying line of sight, what we can see, what we can't see. And you're also a little bit praying. You know what I'm saying? You're just flying around, hopefully you don't hit anything, and hopefully everything goes smooth, right? Well, what happens if a storm rolls in unexpectedly? You know, like we live in the Great Lakes region up here in Michigan. And sometimes like just, dude, crazy clipper snowstorms come through, crazy rainstorms come through. Sometimes things dissipate over the Great Lakes. Sometimes things materialize over the Great Lakes. And you're just, out of nowhere, a storm could roll through. Well, let's say I'm flying my airplane and I'm instrument rated. Now, again, I'm not a pilot, but instrument rated means you're looking at your dashboard. And although you can still use line of sight, you're really flying the plane with the dash, right? You have all your gauges, all your clusters, all your sensors, all your meters, all your metrics, right, on this dashboard. And you're able to see your altitude. You're able to see your ground speed, your airspeed, whatever it is. You're able to see your pitch, whether you're pointing up or pointing down. If you're level or if you're not, are you horizontal? Are you upside down? Right? You're able to see all these different gauges and clusters, your speed, what your flaps are doing, what your rudder, your tails are flaps are doing, whatever, your wings, all these different things, right? All this data is in front of you to help you make better decisions. Now, it doesn't mean you don't look out the window still, right? Because sometimes if we just look at the dash, we can't have the vision to see more than what we just see in front of our faces, right? So sometimes we got to still look out that window. By the way, that's an analogy sometimes for when we just get so lost in the numbers and we let the accountants run the business that we forget to have some vision to make investments to grow the company to get it where it needs to be. Sometimes accountants want to bleed a company dry or make it so exceedingly profitable. They forget to reinvest. They forget to train. They forget to grow the sales department. So again, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the point is, when a pilot's instrument rated and a storm rolls through, COVID, some other catastrophe, some other unknown rolls through, you can look at your gauges, your clusters, and you can have confidence in your ability to still fly the plane and get to your destination. Right? That's the point I want to talk about with knowing your numbers is, what is that? That's your job costs and your overhead costs, overhead job recovery costs that I'm learning, and breaking things down by job, getting your P&L, looking at your QuickBooks, getting those monthly reports from your bookkeeper, or if you're doing it on your own, and seeing what does the company actually look like? Like, what are my actual metrics and numbers and projections, right? My point is, you want to be able to not only fly with your vision, right, but you also want to make sure that you can line it up with your dash, because when you combine the two, you have a very competent pilot. You have a very competent perspective with what you can accomplish with your business. Right? And sometimes if you're just flying and you think things are going well, but your gauge clusters are actually all spinning like crazy, like you're diving, and and you're like, visually, I don't really see anything happening, but your propeller is stalling out and you're losing RPMs, or you're losing fuel pressure or oil pressure, or something's going on with the plane, but you don't know it. And these red buttons are going on and the alarms are sounding, but you don't know because you're just flying by sight, flying by what you feel. That's called running your business without knowing your numbers, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking up, we had the vision, we're flying good. But we also want to make sure that we're looking at those clusters, right? And we want to make sure not only are we flying the plane with line of sight, but we're also an instrument-rated pilot, right? Because if a storm rolls through, we can keep that heading, we can stay on target to our destination, safely land the plane, even when the clouds and the thunderstorms are rolling in, right? So, and I could go on and on and on with this analogy, right? We talk about the autopilot when that kicks in, right? Sometimes you can just put the business on autopilot, and you still got to check and make sure that you're on the right trajectory. But if you have a good system and you have a good plan, you have a good roadmap laid out in front of you, and you hit the autopilot, now you can have a more successful year and just have it on cruise control, if you will. Still checking, right? We always want to check, but it can make your job that much easier. So anyway, quick little analogy. Thought it was really helpful. It's helpful for me, right? So that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. Anytime I'm learning, half the time I do a coaching call with you guys, I'm always learning something from you guys. And we come up with these analogies and these visuals, and it really helped this young man. He's like, I'm getting a CRM. I'm getting QuickBooks. I'm getting a bookkeeper. I said, I don't do homework. I don't do marching orders. You guys are adults. I said, if you can get this all figured out in the next 60 to 90 days, it is going to help you immensely. And so he's going to start looking at his landscape jobs, start looking at the percentages, start looking at the true profit. He's going to look at the macro of his business. What are we doing per month? What's our overhead? Plug all these different numbers, get everything categorized. This is all the stuff that I did in the last 4 years that went from us believing we're making money to actually making money. No, I'm not some millionaire or anything like that. I'm learning every single day, just like a lot of you guys are. But maybe you have a bigger business. Hey, that's great. Take what I just suggested, pop it into your, $500,000 a year gross revenue business, and start dialing in those numbers to be exceedingly profitable at that level, and talk about that paying you huge dividends. That would be awesome, right? So whether you're making 10 grand a year in revenue or 10 grand a week in revenue, this can help anybody listening in, right? So that's it. That's what I got for you guys. Quick little fun one, 35 minutes. That's not too bad for short and sweet from Brian Fullerton himself. Usually that means an hour episode if it's a short and sweet one, as some of you guys say. You get my Joel Osteen on here. But anyway, love you guys as always. Super appreciate you. If this one was helpful, maybe tag it on Instagram. If you guys enjoyed it and you got something out of it, would you do me a favor, reciprocate? Leave me some 5-star reviews. Leave me a well-worded review, as the kids say. Leave us a paragraph. Let us know how we're doing. We're trying to get to 1,000 ratings. I think we're just at about 820 to 850, and my goal is to get to 1,000 by the end of the year and just social proof this podcast a little bit more. But guys, thank you so much for listening in. Let's kick it back over to Marty, Mr. Producer, down in the ATL. And guys, we will catch up with you here on the next one.
The next one, which drops Friday morning, is Brian's interview with Paul Jameson, who has his summer road tour starting this weekend. Paul, as you know, is always a great guest, a friend of the show. Echo, who is sponsoring our podcast, is also a sponsor of Paul's tour. Not only do they make fantastic products, but they are investing in our community, and for that, we are thankful.
Yeah, this is just a tree. Kind of like this is just a chainsaw, and you're just out for a nice little stroll through the woods. The Echo CS7310, a bar up to 32 inches long, 73.5 cc's of whoa. It's just the most powerful chainsaw we've ever made. So yeah, maybe that was just a tree. Echo, power on and on.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
This has been a Brian Fullerton and Mr. Producer production.